Hello, lovely people. It's Nicola back in the Stitches and Slapdashery deck. Not in the sewing room again today. Cheers. It's Friday today, and it's mid-morning. I have already put laundry on the line, cleaned the bathrooms. That really needed doing. When I was sick, I delegated that job to the boys. Didn't get done, did it? Oh, talking about bathrooms in the first 2 minutes. Exciting stuff, eh? So yes, I have worked later, 3 till 8. I'm hoping it's 3 till 8. Last night I had a shift that was supposed to be 3 till 8 and it went till 9 in the end because nobody else was closing along with the managers, so they needed me to stay. And considering we drove back from Nelson yesterday, yeah, I could have done with a shorter shift really. And the funny thing was, I thought, okay, I can stay up a bit later after I got home from work because I could lie in this morning. Well, by 10:30, I was practically comatose on the sofa. And this morning I was awake about 6:30 again, although I forced myself to stay in bed for longer. If only someone had brought me a cup of tea in bed this morning, that would have been ideal. Oh well. So I've got lots and lots of clips of our little road trip to Nelson. It's miles and miles and miles of pine trees and the like. So it's not very exciting. So I think I'm going to just keep the road traveling part to a small chunk of it, because otherwise you'd be like, okay, all these roads look the same. And quite often I wanted to get a picture of a nice lake as we were passing, or a creek, but of course the trees on the side of the road would screen the best views. So I would just get lots and lots of trees whipping by and not really much water, which was a shame. I'm glad I went. It's been a long time since I've been in Nelson, and I'd forgotten most of what was there. It's quite a funky little town. It's known for being a little bit hippy-dippy. And yeah, it was. But that's fine. Suits me. And the Airbnb was really nice. I've got footage from when I was talking to the camera in one of the parks in a thunderstorm, and also at the Airbnb in the evening. So I won't say too much about it now because this is just supposed to be the intro. So yeah, this morning I watered my deck plants. I've got a little bit of footage of my deck plants because I'm really excited about them this year. I made up a few really fun pots, because when we went to the garden centre just before they closed and they had their 2-for-1 sale, I bought a lot of plants that coordinated, like the main theme was pink. And so I got, I can't even remember what they all were, but there were nasturtiums, and there was a coleus, I think that's called, where it had the beautiful leaves with the pink in the middle and the green around the outside. There's pansies, and there's these really cool little spirally grassy things, which, yeah, look amazing. And they're growing really well. The weather's been warm, but it hasn't been unbearably hot the last couple of weeks. It's actually been really nice. Today is overcast and humid. And when I was hanging my sheets on the line, I felt a couple of raindrops, and I thought, I'm going to be a good British person and hang my stuff out anyway. I have another load of towels to put out and then some clothing to put in. So we'll see how that pans out. I did a fair amount of knitting on this trip. Obviously sitting in a car for like, what was it, 4.5 at least hours each way. You have a lot of time, but I didn't want to knit the whole time. I found that knitting with these aluminum higher needles and the chunky yarn quite tiring on my hands. So I would pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down, look at the scenery for a while. Picked up a book, but not for too long. Didn't want to get car sick or anything. And yeah, have a snack, reach into the back for a muffin or a banana or a piece of chocolate and hand some to Mr. Stitches so he could nibble as he drove. So let's see what the progress is. I burned through most of another ball of yarn, which is great. So this is the Fall Bluff Sweater or Fall Bluff Raglan, depending on where you look at it. Croaky. Oh, losing my voice today. And it's a top-down raglan sweater, really, really simple. It starts just with casting on for the neckline, neckband, which I did with a smaller needle. Pattern doesn't say to do it with a smaller needle, but I used an 8mm interchangeable for my neckband and then changed to the 10mm higher, which are going to clack away while I'm talking. Sorry about that. So it's just been a case of increasing every other round for the raglans. And I'm almost to the end of the yoke. There's probably maybe 10 more rows to do on the yoke. Rounds, I should say, not rows. But of course the rounds are getting longer. Every other round they increase by 8, so they're getting longer and longer. So every time I get to my beginning of round marker, it's very exciting. This yarn is very soft and lovely. It's Yarn Smith's Create Super Chunky, but it is already looking quite fuzzy from the pulling it out of the bag and putting it back in and manipulating it as I'm knitting. So I think it's going to pill quite quickly. Yeah, not sure. First time I've used it. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to go back inside and I'm going to go and upload all the little clips from the last 2 days, edit them into some sort of cohesive whole, and see how long the footage comes out as. It may be that I put this up as another little short vlog like I did last weekend, or I might save the publishing until the weekend when I maybe got on with something else that's creative to show you. Hi, I'm sitting under a tree in a thunderstorm. Trying to stay dry, but kind of hard when it's raining this heavily. Sharing this park with some kids. So we drove over about 360 kilometres this morning, set out at 6 a.m. and got to where we're going by 11. And Mr. Stitches went off to one of his meetings, dropped me downtown, and I did a little walk around. Found this farmer's market. Wasn't that impressed. It was a lot of products that I wouldn't buy. Not my thing. So I carried on walking and I ended up at the Kootenai Bakery Company. So I had some lunch. I had a very nice lentil pot pie and a matcha energy ball and a cup of coffee. And then I walked around some more and went to the Kootenai Co-op, which is an organic supermarket here in Nelson, and got some food for dinner. Well, Mr. Stitches is still busy with his appointments, so then I carried on walking and ended up in this place. It's called Gyro Park, and it's beautiful. But yeah, there's a thunderstorm now, and it's pouring with rain. It's very humid indeed. So yeah, I've done a little bit of knitting today, and I've done quite a bit of reading and a little bit of playing on my phone, and a little bit of shopping and eating. Yeah, not sure what I'm going to be doing until Mr. Stitches is ready, but hopefully he won't be too long with his appointments. He'll be able to pick me up from here and we can go to our Airbnb for the night. I've done over 8,000 steps already. He's probably done none. Well, we made it to our Airbnb. It's very tiny, basically just a double bed, and the other end of the room is the kitchenette. We have an air fryer and an induction stovetop, neither of which I plan to use because when I went shopping this afternoon, I just got picnicky food like bread and a smoked vegan cheese and some avocados and an heirloom tomato and some sprouts, alfalfa sprouts, and some olives. So yeah, just fancy picnic food for dinner, really. There's a wood stove, which obviously we're not going to be using, but it would be really cozy in here if it was winter and we wanted to get super toasty. Excuse the background noise. There's a little white noise machine to my right, which sounds like bubbles. So you can probably hear that in the background. There's a TV which just has Netflix on it. So we'll probably watch some of that later on. Yeah, and the bathroom is crazy. It's down some steps and there's a huge soaker tub and all the usual other stuff. So I think we might have to test out the tub later on because it looks really nice. Yeah, at the park, that rain was insane at the park. I got some good footage of it. There was a lot of thunder and there were a lot of sirens as well. So I'm hoping they didn't get any lightning strikes on something. So yeah, after I had hidden under a gazebo, a very large gazebo for a while with the very noisy children who were also mostly sheltering from the rain. They kept running out in the rain and getting soaking wet, but then they'd come back underneath and scream. Mr. Stitches picked me up and he had one more job to do, so I basically just sat in the car for that. And yeah, we had more thunder and rain afterwards as well. So humid today, crazy humid. So the book I've been reading is this one. It's called Pineapple Street, and it's by Jenny Jackson. And I've been enjoying that. Nearly finished it. It did get a teeny bit damp when I was out with a boat because I wasn't set up for the rain. Honestly, it was funny because I got to the park and I was thirsty, and I wished in a way I'd had my water with me, but it was too heavy to carry around. So I had bought myself some elderflower soda. So I had some of that. And I had my rain jacket and my baseball cap in the car. But of course, I didn't have access to that when the rain hit. So as soon as we got here, I got the jeans off and I put the pajama pants on and I put my hoodie on. So I'm all nice and comfortable now. Going back over the Orange Bridge, 7:30 in the morning, leaving Nelson to go back home. The Airbnb was very comfortable. The soaker tub was amazing. And you can see why it's so much greener here in the Kootenays, because they get a heck of a lot more rain than in the Okanagan. Lots of cloud up above the trees today. Well, we're just leaving Nelson, and I'm really hoping that we don't see any roadkill today. It was really sad yesterday on the way here, shortly after we left town. There was a young dead deer in the middle of the road, which obviously got hit by a car, which is really sad. And then later on, when we were almost in Nelson, there were people in the road, and there was a motorcycle down, and a very large deer dead in the middle of the road. So obviously some people had stopped to help a motorcyclist who I assume had hit the deer. He was sitting on the side of the road. He looked to be okay, maybe just shaken up, but the deer unfortunately didn't make it. Again, really sad. So I'm hoping there will be none of that today. It's just so hard when you see them at the side of the road. You're just hoping that they're not going to jump out in front of your car, and then sometimes they just run at the wrong time. So yeah, fingers crossed today. That's a beautiful little rest stop. I don't know if you can see that, but right in the middle of that screen is a big wasp's nest. We're going to leave them to it because they're far enough away from the house that they're not going to bother us there. It's a lovely evening for going for a walk in among the vines. It's Sunday afternoon, my favourite time to be in my sewing room when it's going to be probably 30 degrees outside. You may remember I made this basket a while back. I used a method that Rain Vermont used, and I made a patchwork fabric and sewed it the way she sewed it, and then turned it out, and it self-lines. It's very cool. And the person for whom I made it is now in their new home, and I'm thinking it's time to maybe make another little part of the gift for her. Just finding threads where they shouldn't be any. So I'm going to put that aside for now and show you this fabric that I got this week. Now, one of the girls at work was giving away bits of fabric. She said, "Oh, I've left some fabric in a bag in the break room," and she said, "Feel free to take some." So I ended up taking about half of what she had in the bag, and then a week went by and nobody had taken any more of it, so I just took it all home. Why not? So I'll just show you it. This one I'm not sure about. This one, it has some dark areas, and I'm not sure if it's part of the print or if it maybe got a little damp just here. But I can probably use some of it, if not all of it. Quite a big piece. There's a couple of Christmassy themed ones. There's this red one, which will definitely go in my Christmas bin and go with something. This has Santa and his reindeer on it. So those two will definitely get put away for now. There's a bright blue one, which is more of a duck weight than a quilt cotton, a little bit heavier. Florals, a neutral with baskets on it, random stuff. Orange roses, not crazy on that. Now, let me see. Yes, random green roses, some dotty stuff, some purpley stuff, more floral. Quite a big piece of this. This reminds me of a vintage tablecloth. Actually, it's already hemmed. So I'm not sure what that was previously used for, but I will find a use for it. Some nice teal, some more purple. Some more bright blues. Some greens. Oh, this is actually a batik, which I definitely approve of. And this huge piece is lilac, I think. Lilac and butterflies. So those are the pieces, oh, and this one. These are the pieces that I'm not using today. Because what I've done is I've chosen some of these fabrics. My friend is definitely into vintage looking fabrics. Her tastes are very different to mine. So I've got that one, that one, that one, that one. Now I'm looking at this one again. I'm not sure about it. I'll have to lay it out. And there's quite a few in that taupey range, and a little bit of something pink. So I'm just questioning, where is it? Questioning this one at the moment. I don't want to limit myself too much. It might be all right. Maybe I could use that for the back. So what I thought I would do is do that interfacing patchwork method and small squares of this and make some covers for these jars here. These are Tim Hortons coffee jars, instant coffee jars. I've got the logo in the lid there. And I had them in my cold storage room for ages, thinking I would probably use them for something. It's hard to throw a jar out, I have to say. They do need a good scrub, but they're in good nick. And I did a little bit of math, and I'm going to I'll make one to start with to make sure it fits. So it's just going to be a typical little bag shape with cutouts for the bottom. I'm not going to do a circular bottom because that's more fiddling than I need in my life right now. And I've measured how tall and how long around I want them to be. These are 8.5 inches in circumference. They are 5.5 inches tall without the lid. So I want them to fit a little loosely because obviously you've got to be able to get the darn thing in there. So say 9 inches around finished by 5.5 inches tall. And the diameter should end up ideally about 3 inches. So I've done a little bit of math here with my seam allowances added and all that. And yeah, hopefully it will work out. Do you want to laugh? I already made my first mistake. I drew up a grid of 4 squares by 5, cut it out, started to lay my little 1.5 inch squares on there, and then realized I hadn't allowed for seam allowances. Duh. So that means that if I had carried on with this and then sewn down the lines, I would have ended up with something very teeny. So I'm not going to get rid of this. I am going to use it. But first I'm going to make one that hopefully will fit the jars I have. So I have done another grid on 2 pieces. I don't have a lot of this white medium woven fusible. So I did originally think, oh, wouldn't it be lovely to have a set of 3 jars? Well, I'm just going to try and make one jar cozy. And then I'll probably do a second out of this and find a jar that fits in it, and that will be the set, a small one and a large one. Yeah, we're just running with the mistakes today. So I think that 6 squares by 8 is going to give me the size I need by the time I've sewn all my seams. I have already started cutting some squares. I might just make both sides the exact same so that I don't have to think about it. There, all filled in. So the next thing is to transfer this carefully over to my ironing board, fuse it all on, and sew my seams. I know some of you have seen me do this before. What I've done is I have fused my 1.5 inch squares to my grid, and because I used a friction pen, one of these Pilot friction pens, the lines have all disappeared now, which is cool. Not essential, but I think it's cool. Didn't do it very perfectly, but the nice thing about this is that by the time I've sewn my seams, it should look great. We hope so, right? So what I'm going to do now, I'll just tell you what I'm going to do, and then I'll turn the camera off while I get the sewing done. So this is a great way of getting patchwork done with small squares, because instead of wrestling tiny little pieces of fabric and getting thread nests and all sorts of hassle, you just fold this like this, and you sew this with a 1/4 inch seam, and then you do this next one along, sew that seam, and then that one. And I think I've seen somebody recently who actually trimmed their seam allowance afterwards, but I don't. I just leave it as is. So when you've done all your verticals, you then flip it around and you do your horizontals. Same way. Just fold. It wants to fold right there anyway, because it's on the edges of the squares. And then you do all your horizontals, and then you give it a really good press with lots of steam, and it's done. I will have to trim it to the size I want it, because this isn't going to turn out the exact right size for the jar I'm wanting to cover. But I'll worry about that when the time comes. This is what it looks like once my verticals are done. You can see how small the squares are going to end up. They should end up about 1 inch. So I'm going to go iron that, and I'll iron all my seam allowances in the same direction on the back, and then I'll do my horizontals. Horizontals are done. Just looks like nothing at the moment. When I've pressed it, it'll look a lot better. I'm using that Sharps needle from Class A in my machine, and I have to say it's sailing through these lumpy seam allowances beautifully. I'm using a 2.6 stitch length, so not too small. Yep, and it's sewing it really smoothly. So I'm doing a little bit of adjusting of my math as I'm going. When I trimmed my rectangles, I decided to go to 5.5 inches across rather than 5.25. It'll be a little bit more loose of a fit, but I'm terrified of making it too small. So I think the height will be fine. I was originally going to do 1.5 inch cut boxed bottoms pre-sewing, but I've decided to go for 1 inch because I think otherwise it won't fit the base very well. Now the thing here is I'm going to hit quite a bit of bulk with my seams when I'm sewing my boxy bottoms. Hopefully it will work out. Arg! Oh, I just cut it too far. Look, my scissors went a bit mad over the seam allowance there, and I went about 1/4 inch too far. There's going to be a seam allowance there, but oh man, I may have to put some glue on that or something. Eek! Now that I've decided on the size, the final size of my cut pieces for making this thing, I'm going to cut 2 pieces of fabric for lining as well. If ever you're making bags and you're doing boxy bottoms like this and you're cutting out the squares at the beginning, you could save those little squares, couldn't you? Do this sort of patchwork. But I won't judge you if you don't. Sometimes some scraps are too small to keep. These days, what I usually do is if it's too small to cut a 2-inch square out of it, I will toss it. Right, we're going to do right side to right side on a lining and an outer. The nice thing about this is there are no fastenings, there's no zipper. Let's see. I think I will do it this way because that way my seam allowances will point towards me and they will go with the flow. Ah, I just realized I made a mistake. Again. I was doing a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and the plan was to do a 3/8. Let's just start that again. Not going to unpick the bit I've done. Give that a little iron. Not going to overpin this, but I am going to just match up my seam allowances at the sides here. Oh boy, I hope that extra cut isn't going to be a major problem. Actually, normally I would start here and then do this, but I think I'm just going to go around in one fell swoop. This is not a fancy project with lots of issues. I am going to leave my turning gap in the side though, because there's far more room than there is at the bottom. And I'm going to make the seam allowance in my lining just a little bit wider so that this fabric nests inside there nicely. Now this is the point at which I wish I had done all my pressing the opposite way on one of the sides. But you know what? Because it went kind of wonky, they're not going to be on top of each other all the time. That's the thing with this method, is sometimes everything can go a little bit skewed. Maybe I'll just take it one seam allowance at a time. I'll have to make sure I do it consistently on both sides. There we go. Oh, and there's another mistake. So I think it's important that I don't cover up the fact that I make mistakes. Because even though I've been sewing for a really long time, I occasionally mess up. In fact, I mess up far too often. But then maybe that's why I decided that this YouTube channel was going to be called Stitches and Slapdashery, because I knew myself so well. I'm just going to unpick a little section on the side here so I can turn it out the right way. Oop. What is it about scissors that magnetizes pins? Well, they magnetize themselves, maybe, and then when the pins get close to them, they just glom on. I don't know why that happens. Maybe somebody with a more science background than I can tell me why. All right, I'm just going to reinforce those bits there where I should have stopped stitching. Okay. Boxy bottom time. Oh. What the heck? You know what I've just realized? That, oh my gosh, I just realized that my bobbin ran out all the way back here. So this is like mistake number 6. My bobbin ran out over here. I didn't notice. I sewed all the way along here, or thought I had. And then I went and unpicked that because I didn't leave a gap in this side, and it's not even sewn. Good grief, Nicola, what are you like? Now I'm crossing my fingers. I did a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance on the body of it, but when it came to boxing the bottoms, I just did 1/4 because I'm not feeling very confident about the size of the base. I want the jar to fit in neatly and to stand up without tilting when it's inside this thing. And I'm going to have to just push those corners out and make sure there's no holes. Just opening out my seam allowances there. Ouch. Stabbed myself with a pin. Okay, time to top stitch and sew up the gap in my lining. So here it is, all finished. I don't have complete squares at the side seams because obviously I didn't have a piece that was exactly the right size once I'd finished ironing my squares onto the interfacing. And I'm getting some partial squares on the base as well. It didn't turn out as a square. If I had boxed it maybe a little bit more, it would have been a square, but then it might not have fitted so well. So I'm okay with that. It works. Well, my little sewing session is over for today. I had a bit of fun and a little bit of swearing because I made a few mistakes, but my jar cozy is done and it's good enough that I will give it as a gift. It is not perfect, but it is finished. And it fitted the jar. That was the important thing. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't make it any snugger than that because that would have been a bit too tight. So earlier you'll remember that I had marked up and cut some interfacing that I knew was going to be too small. I realized in time, thankfully. So I decided to use it anyway and make a teeny tiny little thing. It's a pot, I suppose you could call it. So that came out to that size. The four squares by 5 squares that were 1.5 inches. Once you've sewn them, they would be 4 by 5. Yeah, because they're about an inch, 4 by 5 inch. So 2 4 by 5 inch pieces and a 3/4 inch box bottom. And for some reason, my lining is really baggy in there, and I don't really want to go back in and sew it smaller, but it doesn't want to tuck into the corners for some reason. It looks a little bit messy. And the bottoms, oh, the boxy bottoms, I don't know what went wrong there. I suspect that with the really bulky seams and the fact that they end up in these seams down here means that I made a little bit of a mess at the corners. Let's see, that one looks ugly. It has a little bit of another color poking out there, and even though I re-sewed this bit, it looks ugly on this side as well. It's got a little weird lump here. I'm not going to redo it. It is what it is. I don't think even my smallest 1 cup mason jars are going to fit into here. I just went and had a look in my cold room and had a look. I do have the really teeny tiny 1/2 cup ones, but they're the same diameter as the 1 cup ones, and I think this is too narrow. But I suppose this could work as a little thread catcher or something on one's sewing table, couldn't it? It could be used for something anyway. And I rather like the way those colours work together and the florals. So that's a little set. So I'm going to wind up this vlog for this week. If you made it this far, congratulations and thank you for watching. And I'll see you again next week with something else.